In the southern part of Texas, in the town of San Antonio, is a fortress all in ruins that the weeds have...
So here we are back with episode 7, and surprisingly it has probably been the best episode so far of this whole entire season, which doesn't say a lot considering my gripes with the previous 6 episodes. Especially my opinions in episode 6 certainly ruffled a few feathers with the die-hard fans of this show, which goes to show that you can't give criticism on anything these days. As always, this is my gripes and opinions on the episodes and not a full breakdown review. Others do that a whole lot better than me, and as always, spoilers ahead. This episode opens on Steph having some pre-war flashbacks. She's trying to escape Canada with her mom, and the monologue that her mother gives after getting sort of blown up seems to turn her into a stone cold killer, that she's unstoppable as she crosses into the United States. But from there, we cut to her brushing her teeth and showing that even in the vaults you can have gingivitis. We jump across to Hank's happy production line, and we finally talk about what the chip does to people's brains, giving them amnesia and good manners, and also making them good loyal subjects. Also learning that the effects of this are irreversible. Lucy gets a driving lesson, which is quite nice to see. It's an interesting moment, just thrown in there. And Hank claims of wanting a normal life, with Lucy countering that Hank is just wrecking any chance of a normal life. He guides her to the mainframe, where she sees a Legion guy and starts to think that with the mind control chip, she can put a stop to them. We then jump across to Thaddeus, Maximus and the Ghoul. We see that the Ghoul is back in full functioning order with no consequences from the previous episode. He explains to save Lucy that they must get to the vault, cross the Lucky 38 and Vegas, and they need to kit up before doing so. The Ghoul also realises that Maximus has the cold fusion device, which we get a flashback to the Lucky 38 where Steph is actually a worker. She wants to ask about all the vaults, and Coop says they aren't all that, and rather wants to stop the war entirely. He leaves an unconscious Hank with her, which I'm sure will lead to this explanation at some stage. But we jump to the Atomic Wrangler, and it's a pre-war segment where we have Coop talking to the congresswoman. We find out that through their conversation she wants to give the cold fusion device to the president. We know that the American government or the president is the early stages of the Enclave, so we know how that's going to pan out. Anyway, the Ghoul finds an NCR Stronghold, and Thaddeus adds a bit of comedic relief with his "we're just a couple of ghouls." Apparently he also has a mouth thing growing on his chest, which isn't very ghoul-like. The Ghoul explains some sort of plan, and that he wants the cold fusion as a trade to do this. They find some NCR power armour before we just cut to Norm, who realistically possibly should be dead, but no, he was just choked out. Bud now discusses killing him, but instead knocks him out again. Inside Vault 32, Chet tries to hype up Steph, but she's working, and he finds Woody's glasses inside the food extractor in the sink. Inside 33, the Overseer's office, Betty opens the safe and Hank's safety deposit box. She delivers the keepsake box, and we cut to Freeside, where the Ghoul, Maximus and Thaddeus are now back. Where did they get the power core for the power armor though? Anyway, it seems the Freesiders are happy to see the NCR, but again, it's baffling how they would be so happy to see the NCR, yet they've all just seemingly disappeared from anywhere. The Deathclaws are obviously still trapped behind their safety weak chain link fences, but okay. We have a bit of a cool build-up moment of Thaddeus, Maximus and the Ghoul getting ready to storm onto the strip area until Thaddeus's arm falls off. I did chuckle at this, but it just diminishes all that sort of interesting and cool build-up before they go through. Clearly he has a bit more problems than ghoulification. We jump cut to Lucy in a dress in the vault. She sits down with Hank for a nice meal. Lucy asks about the NCR boy if he remembers her as he's pouring water. He says this morning, but she tries to remind him of the NCR post, and then Lucy realizes he doesn't remember her at all. Hank spews on about the NCR, saying they're just like the Legion with unpopular foreign policy elements to them instead. But Lucy uncuffs him, only to recuff him to the oven. We jump again to Norm, who is seemingly rescued by his girlfriend, but instead of escaping like she tries to warn him, no, he just jumps on an intercom and tries to communicate with Lucy or his dad or anybody, which is really strange because of course he gets caught again. We jump across to Chet and Steph's wedding. Chet grows a set and finally says, "I don't." He bubbles on finding Woody's glasses, but of course it really makes sense that if you find the glasses you would just destroy them. So he bumbles about this in front of all the vault dwellers. But actually the thing that gets them all riled up is the fact that he exposes her for being Canadian. Steph runs off and locks herself in the overseer's office, and we cut across to Vegas again. We see a Deathclaw eating another Deathclaw. How the power armour has crossed the threshold of this chain link fence is an interesting one. But anyway, with one Deathclaw down, that would leave 2 to go, and the fight is on. I must say the cinematography here is really nice, and it's very, very nice to see the strip in the daytime. However, again, with the strip being destroyed as it is, it just leads to a whole lot more questions. Maximus gets caught in a car, and Coop has to fight with the railgun. They finally decapitate the Deathclaw, and Coop gets inside the lucky 38, but now 2 more Deathclaws appear. Anyway, Maximus goes and fights the both of them, and Coop buzzes access to get access to the 38. The Deathclaw whips its tail and knocks Maximus through the flimsy gate, opening the Deathclaw to Freeside. So if the Deathclaw can do that with a fully power armoured person, then why couldn't they have just bust through the gate in the first place? It's things like this that seem so stupid. It's like, I want to do the cool thing because, Deathclaw fight, but I don't apply any logic to it, and that's what's really frustrating me. Coop inside the Lucky 38 sees a Securitron husk and a no signal on the big screen where our house is. We get the pre-war flashback to Barb and Coop parting ways. Coop gets into the back of a black sedan, and we cut back to the 38 steps as he descends into the house's penthouse suite. We cut to Lucy with the pimp boy on the way to the mainframe. Cut to Coop pushing the secret button. We cut to Lucy, we cut to Coop. Yeah. These jump cuts here between these, trying to build tension, actually diminishes any tension that we would have had. Had they have done Lucy's element first of all, or after this fact, it would have worked a heck of a lot better. Coop goes ahead and presses the button. He gets into the car with the congresswoman and hands the president, Mr. Krabs, cold fusion. We cut to Lucy finding the head of the congresswoman in the mainframe, and then we see Coop placing cold fusion in House's mainframe. The house always wins, as he pops back up on screen and says hello. Overall, this episode has been one of the strongest in terms of content and enjoyability. However, the editing cuts shaped up nicely at the start of the episode and then just lost itself as it progressed. Unfortunately, it was just used to try and build tension, but whenever the jumps ramped up, it sort of diminished any tension that was there. However, what does this all mean? In the end, it seems the show is trying to spin too many plates and gets bogged down in its own self-importance. The whole Steph plotline feels a wee bit shoehorned in there last minute. However, I dare say they're going to use her and Hank working together as part of the Enclave. I've seen people trying to justify Norm's actions after getting rescued as based on his concussion. However, that feels like a bit of a cop-out. The fact that fans have to force a narrative to explain a character's actions. Again, for House and the cold fusion, if the cold fusion is the key to everything, then that essentially retcons the platinum chip and pretty much gets rid of the point of New Vegas entirely. What was the point of Hoover Dam? What was the point of the platinum chip if cold fusion was the answer to everything? Again, if you've only watched the show or never played New Vegas or had experience of the early games, you're going to think this is fantastic. You're going to think the show is really great. But the fans of New Vegas, the fans of the earlier games as well, they're going to start to look beyond the scope of this episode and go, there's a load of questions here that nobody's ever thought about, and it just impacts and starts to fray the whole entire image. You need to look at this through a bubble, is the way the show is presenting itself at this moment in time, and it's just starting to become a bit of a convoluted mess. But with only one episode left to go, I don't know how they're going to finish it. If they focus it down, they might get out of this convoluted mess a wee bit, but again, it has diminished everything that has came before it. Anyway, what were your takes on episode 7? Does it meet your expectation? Does it beat the previous episodes? Is it your favourite episode? Or again, if you want to berate me for my opinions, please do comment below. I'll see you next time and for the final episode later this week.